Hi guys, today I'm talking about linkage forks, best drivetrains for the future, and longer bars. And by the way, all of these stories have a link below in the description if you want to check out more information. So, starting off with linkage forks, this has been talked about a lot recently, especially because of the Trust message fork being released not too long ago. It's been out for a little while. It's a 130mm carbon fork, which is not telescopic like normal forks. It uses a series of linkages. There's actually quite a lot of linkages, similar to how a rear triangle of a mountain bike works. I'll put a picture up to explain how it works. Now, it could go two ways. I think most likely people will say, remember what happened to that linkage fork and whatever happened to those things in the future. But on the other hand, people could say in the future, remember when people had non-linkage forks, how crazy was that? I mean, my first impressions of it are, obviously it's very expensive at the moment. In my opinion, doesn't look great because it's chunky. It doesn't look slender. It looks heavy, even though I don't think it is that heavy compared to other forks. It might be slightly heavier. But the main thing about it for me is it's just seems to be too complicated. If you can achieve something in a simpler way, I almost always take that route rather than going down the complicated route. So some of the advantages they're saying are it's better with dealing forces which come up head on. So in other words, when you hit a bump, the force goes from front to rear in your bike, and it's potentially better at that, dealing with that force and dissipating that force, than a telescopic fork which can only telescope in the one direction, up and down, and that's dependent on the head angle of your bike. They're saying that the geometry of the bike is less affected when the fork is compressed, so that it will actually sort of fight the forces of you sort of getting bucked onto as the fork goes down. It will actually sort of level out that geometry and keep it going around the corners. Having said that, what people are saying from what I hear is that it's not as plush as a normal fork. Also, it doesn't have as much travel. It's only got 130mm. Not really necessarily suited to enduro or heavier trails. It's more suited to XC, which I don't think will be ideal either, though, because weight is at a premium for XC, and it's just not as smooth on the small bumps, and even on the large stuff I've seen videos where it's pretty rough, basically. So, like I was saying before, at the end of the day, I don't think this one is going to be a huge revelation in forks. I think it's a good idea, and I'm happy that people are trying it, but I don't see it taking off. Mainly because it doesn't look that great, and it doesn't seem to be able to have such responsiveness. And the reason for that, I think, is that it's too complicated. It's got, you know, 5 links on each side, probably 10 pivots, where a telescoping fork just has literally the telescoping part of it, and that's it. So if anything is be able to be done simply, I'd always go for that over a complicated system. So that's my thoughts on that. Next thing I was thinking about were what will be the best drivetrain in the future, or the drivetrain that's used the most in the future. At the moment, we're sort of got a couple of types hanging around. We've actually still got 11 speed. We've got 12 speed, both in SRAM and Shimano. Now we've got Axis, which is wireless drivetrain, and we've even got a 13 speed hydraulic drivetrain by Rotor that's been released a little while ago, that's coming through to mountain bikes in the near future. Now, first off, I wonder what's going to happen to 11 speed now that 12 speed's pretty much being spec'd on all new bikes. Now, I think probably 11 speed will eventually die out. However, having said that, I do understand that 12 speed has tighter tolerances required. It's a bit harder to set up because you've got the bigger range and more gears. The 11 speed is more bulletproof, so it's easier for someone to fix, maintain, look after without dropping chains or anything like that, whereas 12 speed starts to get a bit fiddly. So for that reason, maybe 11 speed won't disappear completely, but it's looking more likely, just because it's spec'd on newer bikes, that 12 speed will probably take over on the mechanical side. As far as 13 speed goes, I think it'll be probably safe to say it's a little bit of a sideshow. The reason Rotor went with the 13 speed apparently is that there was a lot of patents on the 12 speed stuff that Shimano or SRAM have. I was actually surprised they can fit a 13 speed cassette on a standard bike without more concavity in the wheel at the hub, but apparently they can. In fact, they actually use a normal chain, 11 speed chain, not even a 12 speed chain or a thinner chain. So I don't think there's any real reason to have 11 speed. Like, you could actually, 13 speed, you could actually, in my mind, you could still have 11 speed with a greater range, or just stick with the 12 speed that's been developed rather than go from 13 speed. But I suppose the important thing about the Rotor system is that it's hydraulic rather than cable actuated. And I think they're actually saying that the hydraulic system will have even less maintenance required than a cable system, which I can sort of see. I do spend time bleeding hydraulic brakes, however. So, although the forces maybe are a little bit bigger on hydraulic brakes, but don't know about that argument. Bleeding things is a bit annoying, as opposed to just threading through a cable. So at the end of the day, I think probably that won't really take off or will be a niche thing. I don't know if they can get it any lighter than a cable actuated system either, with hydraulic fluids. Which leads on to the last type, which is the newest wireless system. Now, as opposed to the hydraulic, I think the wireless system definitely does have a future and could actually rival, potentially, cable systems in the future, and could actually take over as being more popular. Obviously, at the moment, it's extremely expensive compared to other systems. But I think the disadvantages, for example, like running out of battery, and wireless problems and all that, I think they've figured that out. The weight is very similar. In fact, I think it's tiny little bit less weight than a current 12-speed system. And the main thing is it's just a lot of less cables hanging around, going through your frame and everything like that. So I can see, I think there will always be a place for cable, but there's a fair potential that wireless will become, once it becomes cheaper, and I don't see any reason why it shouldn't become cheaper, because there's nothing inherently expensive about a tiny little motor in the back that moves the gears. Why that system couldn't take over cable actuated in a big way. I don't know what the split will eventually be. Like it might, but I can see it being like 80% wireless, 20% cable eventually over time. Now, the last topic I wanted to talk about was a story of me just putting a longer bar on my bike and what the difference actually was to riding. And I have to say it's made a pretty huge difference, which I was surprised about. Now, to be fair, I actually lowered the stem slightly by taking less, taking spaces out and putting them on top of the stem, but it wasn't much. So I've just really gone from a 710 to a 760mm bar, and a very slight lowering of it, of the stem, and it's made an absolutely huge difference. Now, I think part of that, the difference it is that I can actually lift the front of my bike a lot easier. Now, I don't know if it was just a tipping point where I was having difficulty lifting the front, and it sort of plateaus, and then all of a sudden that little geometry change has allowed me to really lift it up. I don't think it's like a linear thing. I think it's like you reach a point and then a little bit extra just pops you over the edge because the bike has become actually balanced. Now, I think that's very important with longer, slacker bikes, which basically all modern bikes are longer, slacker now. Just the fact that the front wheel contacting the ground is so much forward compared to where it used to be with bikes. So you need to get your weight, you need to get your arms, where your handlebar is, as far back as possible towards your body, so a shorter stem, and the fact that your arms are out further also brings that center of gravity or center of mass further back on the bike. So I can just jump better, I can pull my front up better, do pop monos and stuff so much easier, better for jumping, better for balance. So yeah, anyone who's still got a shorter bars, unless you're XC, I'd highly recommend getting a long bar and a short stem and lowering it. especially with a modern bike. Definitely do it. It's well worth it. I can't believe how much difference it's made, actually. Really good upgrade. Alright, I think that's enough for today. I feel like I've been talking for too long already. Leave a like, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.